We're ready to start now.
Good afternoon. This is the Wednesday, March 20th, 2019 meeting of LAFCo. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Here.
Commissioner Garbarino,
Here.
Commissioner Horsley,
Here.
Commissioner Lohman,
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Slocum, Chair Draper.
Here. The next item is consent calendar, and we have two items. One is the approval of the minutes for January 16th, and the second item is LAFCO File 1810, which is regarding a proposed annexation on 28 Arastadero Road. We'll take these with one motion.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Item 3, this is a moment for public comment for items not on the agenda. And for this item or other ones, if you wish to speak, there's a speaker's card up with the clerk and in the back, if you could fill that out for us. But for item 3, are there any cards for?
None.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Okay. Now we're going to go to item 4. And about a year ago, we looked at the municipal service review for the districts. And in that review, we asked for an update from the two districts, and we have information in the packet about those. Is there more, staff, that we wish to add to that?
Just very briefly, yes, you have a March 13th cover memo and updates from the Peninsula and Sequoia healthcare districts concerning activities, including services aimed at meeting the needs of the medically underserved within and outside their boundaries. And this was one recommendation in the municipal service review was that LAFCO staff and the district staff work on the potential for expanding the boundaries to include underserved areas that are not in the district's boundaries. Not a lot of progress has been made on that for a variety of reasons. And so the update does provide some information in that regard in terms of what the districts are doing. I also wanted to state that the chair has asked for clarification regarding the status of the below market rate units at Peninsula Healthcare District's Truesdale facility, which includes 101 units for assisted living and 23 memory care residents. The district's committed to providing 10, so there was a numerical commitment of 10, not 10%, but that happens to be about the same because there are only 101 units. The district reports that as of Monday, 5 of the 10 below market rate units have been rented, which is parallel to the overall move-in rate of 61 of the 124 being rented to date. Regarding the Peninsula Wellness Community, the district has a stated commitment of 10% below market rate units of the units to be built. That project is still in the planning stages and has a window of about 2.5 to 3 years before breaking ground. And so the total number, the actual project description in terms of the number of units isn't pinned down. Both Cheryl Fema and Pamela Kurtzman from Peninsula, Sequoia, and Peninsula Healthcare Districts are here if you have any questions for them.
Any questions? Do you want, you do? Yeah. Mike.
I noticed on here you're doing some stuff with the Sequoia High School District, and you're looking at transition items for the well-being from the elementary school district. My wife happens to be a principal, and there's a lot more issues than just transitioning from middle school, elementary to middle to high school, especially among the foster kids. Is there any plan on expanding these services to? I wondered who I was talking to.
Yes, please come forward and then state your name for the record.
Hi, Pamela Kurtzman, Sequoia Healthcare District. I think it doesn't need to be that close. Yes, we actually have an incredibly extensive school health program. We put about $4.3 million annually into our local school districts. We have 8 school districts we work with, and that transition, and that's just one tiny piece of what we're doing. Our major focus has been on mental health of students and Tier 1 support services, so interventions and prevention efforts prior to needing a lot of support in the older years, as in middle school and high school. So we have counselors in our school districts and nurses. We have trying to bring in restorative justice, and just a number of different programs within that 4.5 million. And then part of that also includes 30-something staff that we help support full-time in our schools to make sure that this initiative is running smoothly and is coordinated. And then we work with several nonprofits as well.
So you are doing something about the helping the counselors manage the load in some of the elementary school districts.
Right. So aside from supporting curriculum and helping to revitalize some of the curriculum that's kind of old and outdated, to be able to help the counselors and the wellness coordinators, the admins, the teachers, to be able to provide services and really support the whole child while at school, because we think that's where the students are, and that's where they need the supports to receive health services, and we want to get them where they are and get them early and get them younger.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? You bet. No. We are giving them, we are bringing curriculum to the schools. For instance, one of the curriculum is called Neuroscience of Addiction, taught to every 9th grade student at the high school district. And it shows students, it doesn't tell students doing drugs is bad. What it does is it actually shows the repercussions of what happens to the developing brain, what happens to your relationships, what happens to future career. It really gets kids thinking, wow, this is something I probably don't want to do, and lets them come up with the decision. So we bring curriculum, we bring the counselors. We have a Redwood City School District has a PE program, almost $1 million program that we support to make sure that every child K through 5 receives PE 3 times a week. And so when I say supports, it's those kinds of programs. And then again, all the teaching staff.
Yes.
Well, all those are good programs. Don't get this, but I know some of the issues. I mean, like my wife being a principal actually had one kid who the mother tried to kill the kid tried to kill himself, and he would come in her office and say, why am I here? I want to kill myself. And those are that's obviously beyond a principal or assistant principal, and even the part-time counselor that the school is. And he was a foster kid, and this school had a lot of issues because of the foster kids. Is there any coordination with the Child Protective Services or whatever to find and identify those kind of kids?
That is a great question. We learned that the school districts don't actually track who their foster kids are. And so we've been working to try to settle that. They actually don't track who their foster kids are, or which ones are homeless. And so we've had an extraordinary wellness coordinator at the high school district who's been spearheading this with a couple of their board members, particularly Carrie Dubois, and now with the County Office of Ed, to try to find a system so that we can identify who these students are and make sure they have the extra support they need, and that the teachers have the training to be able to deal with things like that. We did put together an emergency response booklet from UC Cal. It's called the Green Folder Initiative, and it is literally a folder that instructs any staff, whether it's a bus driver or the admin, on how to respond to certain emergencies. It's a protocol, and now we're developing an app for that Stanford's doing. And so each of the school districts will have this protocol so that they have right at their fingertips, what do I do in this situation, plus a lot of the training and staff development that goes along with that.
So is this the HEPA laws that are causing the disconnect between identifying the kids or whatever?
I think that's part of it, but also there's been some non-updated databases so that there hasn't been able to communicate that information from, say, the teachers or their academic record or the counselors, where they can't communicate some of it. But I think that's being addressed with the County Office of Ed, because it's a big deal.
Can I just a comment on that, because it's the County Office of Ed and Sheriff's Department and our Human Services Agency do, in fact, it's a coalition for safe schools, and for a kid like what you're talking about, Mike, they actually would, they do have a psychiatric emergency team that actually would respond and work with the school district and that child and make sure that they're safe. So it's not, it is something that, I've been working on myself with that Coalition for Safe Schools with the County Office of Ed. So this, you can't guarantee that every problem is fixed, but I can guarantee that every kind of case like that would merit a response from that crisis intervention team. Can I ask Pamela, do you still guys fund nurses in some of the schools?
We do. We fund total now of I'm just trying to go by memory, about 10 school nurses full-time and several LVNs,
Good, thanks.
licensed vocational nurses in the schools, and that's made a huge difference as well.
Okay, any other questions? Yes?
I live out on the coast side where one of the Sonrisas dental clinics is that Peninsula Health picked up. I would just like to thank them, and I hope they can keep doing that, because that's a great thing for the coast out there to help out the people. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And thank you for the updates. And I'm assuming then the conversation about expanding services will be in the next few months.
I'll start working with this district staff on that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for attending. Thank you for the information. Item 5 is LAFCo file 1901, proposed emergency outside service extension for sewer by the city of San Carlos. Staff?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. LAFCo file 1901 is a proposed emergency connection for a sewer system for 252 Club Drive in unincorporated San Carlos, pursuant to Government Code Section 56133. The septic system on the property has failed. There is a map that shows the location of the property in yellow. The corresponding blue is the sphere of influence of the city of San Carlos. The septic system has failed, and there was documentation from San Mateo County Environmental Health that LAFCo received and the city of San Carlos received in September of 2018. The parcel, as you can see on the map, is contiguous to the city boundary of San Carlos and located within the sphere of influence. Due to the amount of time required for the pre-zoning and annexation process, the property owners have requested a sewer extension to mitigate the ongoing environmental health hazard. This proposal has been submitted by resolution by the city of San Carlos in order to connect the existing single-family residents to the public sewer system. On March 11th, 2019, the city of San Carlos approved a resolution for the outside service agreement. This agreement stipulated that the property owners will apply for pre-zoning annexation to the city and LAFCo within 30 days of that resolution from San Carlos. The property owners have already consented to future annexation by the city as part of the agreement, and LAFCo has been able to confirm with San Carlos that the property owners have already submitted the application and paid their fees for pre-zoning and annexation. The LAFCo conditions for this application are that the applicants then conduct the process with pre-zoning and annexation with the city of San Carlos, submit an annexation application to LAFCO, submit permits to County Environmental Health regarding the abandonment of the septic system, submit all required documents and permits to County Planning and Building for the sewer connection, and then pay all required fees for those permits prior to the issuance of a LAFCO approval letter. The sewer extension is consistent with Section 56133 and the existing policies of San Mateo LAFCO, and the application is also consistent with the draft update outside service extension policy, which we'll be talking about later. With that, LAFCO recommends that by motion, the Commission approve LAFCO file number 19-01, the proposed emergency outside service extension for sewer by the city of San Carlos, the existing single-family residence at 252 Club, pursuant to Government Code Section 56133, and direct the executive officer to send a letter of approval to the city and property owner conditioned upon submittal of the pre-zoning and annexation application and fees. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do not believe the property owners are here, though.
Just one question, Mr. Bartolo. Is the city's boundary, is that the line that's down the middle of that street of Club Drive?
No, the city boundary in this particular case is the front of the property. So it's everything that's in blue is unincorporated. So Club Drive, the entire width of the roadway, is already in the city of San Carlos. I think the black line is just showing center line in that little area there. center line of the roadway. But there's no, so there, when the annexation of the property does come in, it will be, the description will be of the parcel itself and not the roadway.
Yeah. Are the other parcels that are in not shaded blue, are they all septic systems?
No, those are then exist by the city of San Carlos sewer.
Oh, okay.
There are some parcels that are in blue that are unincorporated that are on septic still though.
Any other questions? Any member of the public wish to speak? All right, I'll entertain a motion. The recommended motion is shown on page 3 of the staff report.
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on. This is item 6 is consideration of adoption of proposed work plan and the LAFCo budget for 2019 and 20. Is there additional information that staff wishes to?
Yes, I'd like to provide one correction. You have the staff report dated March 12th, and a correction to it is that the net operating budget that's cited in paragraph 1, line 2, should read $498,019 and not $376,639. That's a typographical error.
Can you say that again, please?
The correct amount on paragraph 1, line 2 for the operating budget should be $498,019.
Okay.
And that represents the appropriations budget less the application fee revenue. All the other information in the spreadsheet and elsewhere in the report is correct. The report provides background on the requirement for LAFCo to adopt a budget, and that the budget be adopt a budget in 2 hearings, and it also provides information on the funding formula, which is that the LAFCO budget less the adopted budget less the fee revenue is apportioned in thirds, 1/3 to the county, 1/3 to the 21 cities and special districts, and 1/3 to the 20 cities. And those thirds to the cities and special districts are based on proportional revenue to the whole relative to the whole of those agencies. The proposed work program and budget of $602,612 was reviewed by the Budget Committee, Commissioners Horsley, O'Neill, and Cosgrove, and they recommend presenting it to the full commission for approval. The net operating budget of $498,019 results in 1/3 apportionment to the 3 funding groups of $166,006. Other provisions of the law regarding the budget include that the proposed and final budgets shall be at least equal to the budget adopted for the previous fiscal year, unless the commission finds that the reduced staffing or program costs will allow the commission to still fulfill their purposes and programs required in the Act. And there's also a provision for carryover of unused funds to the subsequent year's budget. This 2019-20 budget represents the first full year of the commission being staffed at 2.5 full-time employees, so principal management analyst, your executive officer, management analyst, and a half-time clerk. And this staffing level and the overall appropriations are consistent with other urban LAFCos. The report on the recommended fee revision, which is the next item, includes a table that allows you to compare the budgets and staffing level of the various LAFCos that are of similar size. The staff report has information on the work program, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about that. The budget is also based on an estimated actual 2018-19 budget, and so some of those numbers may change. We may have new information when this goes to back to you for the May meeting, but the estimated actual budget is $79,593 less than the adopted budget, and those funds would be carried over as a fund balance, and it's recommended that those funds be used to offset the cost to the 3 funding groups rather than building a reserve. I think I'm going to leave it at that. We have a standard of a 3% reserve. Pardon me?
So sorry to interrupt, but could you just talk a little bit about how the fund balance of $79,000, how that was came to be? Just describe a little about that calculation.
Sure. If you go to the staff report and the Excel spreadsheet that's included, and I think you were given larger versions. easier to read. If you look at the revised adopted budget, so the third column from the right shows a total appropriations budget of $574,397. And then you go to the estimated actual for the 18-19, and you see that there's savings. That savings combined with a slightly less than anticipated fee revenue results in the difference, which is the $79,593. So in some years in the past, the commission has chosen to actually set some of those funds aside in a reserve in anticipation of any or for unanticipated expenditures, and then use the rest to offset the operating budget for the funding agencies. And in this case, all of that money would just be used to offset the cost to the three funding groups. Pardon me. So the recommendation today is that you open the public hearing and accept public comment and consider and approve by resolution the attached proposed budget of $602,612 and direct the executive officer to schedule the final 2019-20 budget for a public hearing on May 15th, 2019 and meeting, and it would be circulated, of course, to the cities and special districts prior to that and the county as well. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Commission, any questions?
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Is there members of the public who would wish to speak on this item? Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Are there any comments by the commission before we take the action? Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to say we had a special districts meeting last night also. The tone was more educational, I think, for everybody, but the sort of final feeling was that if we have X number of things we have to do and so many MSRs that have to be done, that this seemed to be an appropriate level of staffing and money to do that. So there weren't any, objections. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Except for Rich.
Okay. Well, we have a. I think you said we had to do a resolution. Is that correct? Or do we just open the public hearing and then consider and approve the? Okay. The recommendations are on page 5, and so we've done item 1, and so we need to have a motion on items 2 and 3.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Oops. Item 7 now is the fees, processing fees, and there are a recommendation for modification of those fees. Staff, is there any addition that you wish to add or provide?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just give a brief overview of the staff report. The report provides backgrounds on the process for establishing fees for LAFCo for both applications that the Commission receives. As part of the 2019-2020 LAFCo budget, LAFCo then reviewed the existing fee schedule as they were revised last in 2014, which the 2014 fee schedule is attachment B to the report. The proposed update to the fees takes into account increased salary and benefits, the addition of a full-time management analyst and shared secretary position, and are based on the varying complexity and requirements related to processing different types of applications. Staff is asking that the Commission review and approve the draft fees at this meeting, and then we'll bring it back for final consideration in May. The updates to the fee schedule achieves reasonable cost recovery and processing proposals while still while not discouraging boundary changes applications. Annexations and outside service agreements that are typically less than 5 acres in size are the most common application that LAFCo receives. When we looked at our fee schedule, The highest proposed application for this type of application, which would require SQL review and would be larger than 5 acres, would be about a little bit over $4,000. That application fee is still lower than the general application fees for a number of LAFCos. So again, we're making sure that our entry fees for the typical applications that we see are reasonable. And there is a cost comparison for other LAFCos in the state based on budget, based on staffing, and based on other fees type that is attachment C. Fees for other types of applications either have remained at actual cost or proposed to be increased. Those fees are typically increased about 16%, which represents the increase of LAFCO's budget since 2014, and also reflects salary and benefit increases that have changed since that time. Fees for services, including requests for time extensions, requests to hold special meetings, fees for outside legal counsel, petition verification by the San Mateo County Registration and Elections Division, and requests of copies of meetings were fees that were not on the schedule previously but are now proposed. There were updates to the language for Fish and Wildlife SQL filing fees and State Board of Equalization fees, as those change typically year after year. We didn't want to have the exact number reflected on the fee sheet, but instead have a reference to those particular agencies so that people are aware of any kind of updates to those fees. In March 5th, 2019, the Budget Committee recommended approval of the revised fee schedule. And the committee also recommended that the Commission adopt a policy reviewing and updating LAFCO fees on a biannual basis, with the next review occurring in 2021. So it is recommended the Commission approve the draft 2019 LAFCO processing fee schedule, which we brought back in May 15th, 2019 meeting for final approval after recirculation to public and affected agencies. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioner
Not a question, just a comment. I thought that Martha and Rob in the committee meeting that we had did a good job in describing how we're capturing the costs through these updated fees as reasonable as possible. So I just wanted to thank you for that and just say that I think we are, that staff is doing a good job in capturing costs as reasonable as possible. And I also agree with having this regularly reviewed every couple of years is, I think, a good thing to do. So I support it.
I have a comment, and that is I'm glad that in the future we're going to do this on a regular basis, because I was surprised that it hadn't been done for a while. And I could see where people would look at that and say, oh, gosh. And then when they realize that it hasn't been since 2014, then maybe there's a realization. So I agree with the subcommittee. Any comments by the public on this item? Seeing none, we have a recommendation for by motion to adopt the processing fees, but to send it out for review before adoption. So do we want to adopt it now or just send it out to review?
The recommendation's revised to receive them and accept it and direct us to send it out for final approval in May.
Okay. Is there a motion to receive and accept and send it out for?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. Okay. Item 8 is one that the other committee has been working on, which is a policy change for how we process extensions of service outside jurisdictional boundaries. We've worked on it and then had I think Commissioner Cosgrove wanted to have a longer period of review, so we did that. And we did receive one letter from the city of Redwood City, who's really quite the leader on how to do it. And so I would like the staff to provide any updates.
Yes, thank you. You have a staff report that's dated March 6th that should actually have been dated March 13th, which it was produced after we got comments from the city of Redwood City. This item is concerning the adoption of updates to policy for extension of service outside jurisdictional boundaries pursuant to 561 Government Code Section 56133. And that section states that a city or district may provide new or extended services by contract or agreement outside its jurisdictional boundary only if it first requests and receives written approval from the Commission. The core intent of 56133 is that LAFCo may approve a sewer or water connection within the sphere of, outside the boundaries of a district or city, but within the sphere of influence in anticipation of annexation, or outside the sphere of influence of an agency in order to mitigate an existing or anticipated public health threat. And in recent years, the Commission has reviewed several proposals, various applications from cities and districts, with the majority of the applications involving the city of Redwood City. And those involve extension of water service to parcels in the city sphere. And these applications are common, and if you can see on the screen that the city of Redwood, this shows the city of Redwood City's sphere of influence and the city's boundaries. And the city is the designated water service retailer for areas outside their sphere of influence, including Emerald Lake Hills that's circled there. And in their agreement for water supply with San Francisco Public Utility Commission. So they have a service area that is actually much larger than city boundaries, and in some cases actually outside their sphere of influence, because when the agreement was done with SFPUC, spheres didn't exist. For more recent applications, the Commission has approved extensions conditioned upon a deferred annexation agreement that would be recorded and run with the property to increase the likelihood of future annexation and to comply more precisely with Section 56133. At the direction of the Commission's Legislative and Policy Committee, staff has prepared the draft clarifying language that's before you today and that's been circulated to include a requirement for annexation agreements to meet those provisions. At the December 2018 meeting, the Commission directed that those draft policies be recirculated for additional time for comment. And the Commission, you have in your packet the December 28th letter that was sent to the cities and special districts. And as noted, the only agency to comment was Redwood City, and their comment letter is also included in your packet. And I would note that several of the cities, it was good to hear from someone, because sometimes you just hear crickets, and several of the city's comments were helpful in just clarifying the language to someone outside of LAFCo, and so we made changes accordingly. The updates and clarifying language are not a change in the direction from the past practice of the Commission to require deferred annexation agreements. It's a matter of clarifying it in the policy that is one of the conditions of a LAFCo approval. And they do bring the Commission more in compliance with 56133 as the Commission reviews these applications. In regard, I can go over, if you'd like, the different points that were made by the city and the response to them, or I can just see if you have any questions about any specific questions.
Before we move on to questions, I want to acknowledge Katie Martin and James and Jim O'Neill, who are out in the audience, who are also part of the subcommittee that worked on this in addition to myself. Are there any questions? Anybody in the public? Okay, I just want to thank staff. It was a lot of work. This is one of the goals of the Policy and Legislative Committee, is to have policies which reflect the actions that we take, so that it's written down and people can know in advance how we can proceed. And this is just an example of that, where it's important to be clear. So we're looking for a motion to approve the recommendations to the policies. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, it's approved. And so, let's see, we're on item 9. Which is Legislative and Policy Committee.
Yes, thank you. You have the March 11th staff report, which includes a recommendation on the commission sending 2 letters of support for AB 213 and AB 1253. And then you also have the LAFCo legislative update report, which is the tracking of the different bills that affect LAFCOs. I will just leave it at that, and if the commission has questions about either of the letters or the bills that are being tracked by LAFCo. I should also add that there's one bill that is not in the tracking by LAFCo that does affect San Mateo County, and that's Assembly Bill 825. And that is a piece of legislation that was put forward by CCAG, the City and County Association, the CCAG. Governments, thank you, that is proposing to requesting legislation that would convert the San Mateo County Flood Control District into the San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District. And it would, in order to address the sea level rise in San Mateo County, it would revise the governance to a 7-member board, including 5 city council representatives and 2 county supervisors, and expand the authorities to address sea level rise, as well as update funding and financing authorities to reflect the changes. It's a bill that would use special legislation rather than LAFCO to create such a district, and it is something that I think is more efficient than trying to go through some of the requirements of LAFCO, that, such as elections and things like that. And so that's just a bill that we'll be watching, and I'll keep you informed on. And I'll be happy to answer questions about the report.
Are there any questions? Okay. And again, thanks to our 2 alternates who are working hard on the subcommittee with these letters.
I think we need a motion on that as well as.
Actually, the letters, so normally the legislative letters, because of the commission's meeting cycle, we typically have, if there's an urgent item for legislation, the commission's policies allow the legislative committee to approve letters. In this case, we had time to put it to the whole commission, so it would be appropriate to act on the letters.
I thought they were
Thank you.
already
I
moved.
would make a motion and provide direction to staff to send letters for both AB 213 and AB 1253.
Did you, our second?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me out there. Item 10 is a information only on LAFCo membership due increase.
Yes, you have a memo dated March 11th on this. The California Association of LAFCOs is an agency that this commission's been a member of since the 70s when it was formed. It started as a volunteer organization and has now gone to being a paid and staffed with I believe 2 full-time people, and they provide a variety of services, including, as you just saw, the legislative updates and advocating for LAFCOs in Sacramento. There's also considerable staff support that we receive in terms of workshops and conferences and training as well. The executive director announced at the recent LAFCo board meeting that there was a need to amend the fee structure to cover a structural budget deficit. And the proposal is to increase fees by 16.25% across the board, and then for just this year only, and then in the coming year, by the time there's the workshop annual conference, there will be a vote of the membership on a revised membership dues structure. So the current one is based on CSAC, and it's by population and urban, rural, and suburban, and there will be probably more categories, but the base fees that they'll base it on are not on these 16% increased fees, but on the current year's base fees. So it won't be as drastic as a 16% increase again. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. When we send our commissioners to attend at the conference, one of them will be a voting member and will be voting on what happens with your membership, with the membership dues for LAFCo. And that's all I have for you.
Any questions? Yep.
Well, it's in part due to the membership dues is not structured around the cost of doing business. It's just they have this dues revenue that's a fixed revenue. And then annually, when they have the conference, they've been relying too heavily on any excess money that's left over from funding the conference. And they want to move away from relying on having to charge so much for the conference that they're balancing their budget at the expense of conference goers. Well, it's actually that it hasn't gone up so much. It's that the fees have not regularly not been covering. So it's been a kind of an ongoing structural budget deficit. It's not just this year.
I have one question. I was just looking at the fee schedule, and I noticed that Los Angeles, with over 10 million people, pays the exact same amount as Alameda County with 1.5 million people, or 1.6 million people. It's the exact same number. How did they do that?
So the categories are they're fixed amounts. So they have population ranges, and I imagine they go over a certain amount. So LA is always going to be at the top. When you look at the overall revenues for fees, the urban LAFCos are really the ones that are paying the lion's share of the LAFCo budget, and some of the rural LAFCos, as you can see, are paying almost nothing. Right. And one of the goals that LAFCo has in the fee in redoing the membership dues is to not lose those rural LAFCos, because there's a lot of it's better to be able to go to a legislator in Sacramento and say, we represent every single LAFCO, and if they raise the fees too much, they'll start seeing these rural LAFCos drop out.
It's funny seeing some of the size of some of the counties. Alpine has 1,100 people, and they have district elections. Interesting.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
You're elected. Can't lose.
Let's see. Any commissioner reports that you would like to make?
Don't have a jail either.
Staff? Well, Commissioner Lohman told us at the beginning of the meeting that we started in winter, and at the end of this meeting, we're officially in spring. So welcome to spring, everyone.
Thanks.
That will adjourn at 3:09, I guess. Thank you. 3:12. Thank you.
They just keep coming.
Oh, my God.